I'm Jason Little, and this is 10 minutes off the top of my head. So, the last video I ended with saying that science needs to show how their nonsense fits into the Bible. And I think that this is where Christians need to be in their thinking, and Christians need to be thinking about this because the Bible is under attack. It's been under attack since the very beginning when Satan said to Eve, is that what really God, is that what God really said? Did God really say that? Come on, Eve. God doesn't want you to be wise. You can be just like him. Have a bite of the fruit. It won't hurt you. It won't kill you. Right? The Bible's been under attack since that moment, and it's still under attack. And so I want to examine that idea of the Bible being under attack, but also this. Think about this. God has a definite plan. There is a definite plan that God has, and he's been carrying out his plan step by step by step by step down through the ages, since the beginning of time. And God has carried forth his plan using the instrumentation of human beings and God's interaction with those human beings. And so that continues to this day. But too many of us Christians, we think and believe that. We know that. We believe it. And when we stop and think about it, we can begin to see it happening throughout history. And I'm going to give you some examples of that. But let me ask you a question. Does Satan have a plan? Or is it that just, Satan said, hey, I want to ascend above the Most High. I want to be God, is what Satan said, right? And God took him out of his place, and he became the enemy of the people of God. Now, we don't know exactly when all this happened, and there's a great debate. There's great debates that go on about that and controversy. I had a pastor that told me that it all happened within the week of creation, that the earth was created and all of creation was made, and during that time is when Satan fell, and Adam and Eve didn't last more than a day in the garden. That could be. It also could be that Adam and Eve were in the garden for 100 years before Satan fell and before he came down and tempted Eve, and she followed Satan instead of God. And it could be that they were there for 1,000 years, and it could be any number of things. It could be, we don't know because the Bible doesn't say, we just don't know. There's all kinds of theories, but we can't prove it. We're not going to prove it, so it doesn't really matter. What really matters is that it happened, and we know that it happened. And we have to start from that point on. So God had a plan, and what we have to realize is that Satan also has a plan, had a plan, and has a plan. And let me give you a few examples. God creates the heaven and the earth. God puts plants and trees and flowers, the sun, the moon, the stars, mankind. God creates light, which science can't even explain. God creates light. God creates night and day. God creates everything. And so that's God's plan. Boom. He wants to have fellowship with man. He created man for fellowship with him. Satan says, you know what? That's important to God, so I'm going to go down there and wreck it. Later on in the New Testament, we see Jesus saying that the thief comes not but to kill, steal, and destroy. Speaking about Satan, that he's only here to kill, steal, and destroy. Do you think he doesn't have a plan for that? He does have a plan for it, but here's the difference. God is omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipresent. Satan is none of those things. So God, being omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipresent, made a plan from point A over here where the world began, where time began, all the way to point Z over here where it all ends. God's got a plan to fill in all the gaps, all the spaces, all the parts of that entire history, existence of this earth. God's got it all planned out. Now, also God knows what Satan's going to do. He knows Satan's plan before Satan knows it, because Satan can only make plans as he goes. And again, here's proof. If Satan had have known that God was going to create the earth and the heavens, and that God was going to create man to have fellowship with him, why didn't Satan, just as soon as Adam was created, come down and chop his head off? And then he could have had this war with God, between God and God creates a man, Satan kills him. And that's just, that's just a thought. Who knows? But what I'm saying is Satan can only make a plan reactionary to what God has done. Now, we have to understand this too. Satan knows a lot of God's plan. He knows a lot of the big picture stuff. I don't think he necessarily knows the details, but he knows the big picture stuff, just like we know the big picture stuff because it was written in the Bible and Satan knows the Bible. And Satan sees in the Bible at the end, he loses. He's cast into the bottomless pit. He's there for 1,000 years. He gets released for a while. He deceives the nations again. And then there's the last and final battle between God and Satan's cast forever into the lake of fire. So Satan knows that that's the end of all things, that's it for him. But I think, my theory is that Satan doesn't believe it. He thinks he's going to win. Otherwise, why continue to try and fight? So this is the true nature of Satan, that he has a plan and he's been enacting that plan all through history. And here's some examples. Adam and Eve, I gave you that example. God makes Adam and Eve. Satan comes down, deceives Eve. Boom. That fellowship with God, that relationship with God is broken. And now God has to enact his other plan, which is to redeem man, or his plan was already in the works. And he begins that redemption plan. But for the glory of God, it takes all these millennia to come to fruition. And there's you read about the mysteries in the Bible and the mystery of the church, the mystery of salvation. We read about these things that were mysteries to people like Adam and Eve and Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and Moses and David and Solomon and all the way down through to the end, Ezra, Nehemiah, and all of these people. It was a mystery to them, but God revealed it all through the advent of Jesus Christ, through himself coming to earth as a man. So Satan has a plan, and he doesn't quite know everything, all the details of what God's doing. So what we see is Adam and Eve, then there's the flood, and then after the flood, there are a group of people that get together in the plains of Shinar, and they're led by a man named Nimrod, and Nimrod begins to create this tower. He wants to ascend into heaven and attack and kill God. That's his goal. Here's Satan's move, right? This is Satan's move on the cosmic chessboard, if you will. Satan makes a move. Here comes Nimrod. He's building a tower. God looks down, he sees it, he says, oh man, they're all together, they all speak one language, and they're conspiring against me. And here's the interesting thing about Nimrod, which you don't get I don't think it's not from the Bible, but we get it from ancient history. We get it from Josephus, that the inside of the tower was inlaid with bitumen. It was pitched inside to make it waterproof, because the other function that the tower was going to serve was to save them from another worldwide flood. Now, stupid Nimrod did not understand that God had already told and promised that he would never flood the earth again to Noah. He told Noah, I'll never flood the earth again. Here's the rainbow, and it will never happen again. But Nimrod didn't understand that, because Satan didn't understand that, or Satan wasn't able to communicate it to Nimrod or whatever. So he's building this tower. God confounds the language. That's his move. Boom. Checkmate, Satan. You lose. Want to play again? Right? So we go on as time begins to unfold, and we see all that happens in the Old Testament. You look at how Satan tried to interact with different kingdoms and different kings. For instance, Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar was a Babylonian king, and his idea was to take over the world and unite the world under a one world government, one world religion, one world monetary system, just like what's going on today. It's not a new idea, it's a very ancient idea. And so what happens to Nebuchadnezzar? Well, if you read the Bible, you find out that Nebuchadnezzar got saved. Nebuchadnezzar got saved. Boom. Problem created, problem destroyed. Satan makes his move, God makes a counter move. Checkmate. Want to play again? So then we see Nebuchadnezzar's grandson, Belteshazzar, who gets taken over by the Persians and the Medes and the Persians. And then they move their king in. And what happens to their king, Darius? Well, it appears that he got saved too. So God keeps making these counter moves. Satan makes these moves, or I'm sorry, God makes moves, Satan makes counter moves. And so Satan always loses. And then we see it again with Alexander the Great trying to take over the world, trying to establish a one world government, trying to bring everybody under subjection to him. And what happened to him? Well, Alexander the Great was a perfect Satanist. And what I mean by that is Alexander the Great lived a completely debauched lifestyle. He was a drunkard. He was on drugs, and he was sexually promiscuous. And so at 33 years old, he dies, right? Dead. Or was he 30? I forget how old he was. But he dies. Splits his empire into 4 different groups, all of which ultimately amounted to nothing. And pretty much were poor excuses for empires once Alexander was off the scene. So then we see the Roman Empire. Now they begin to really get it together. The Roman Empire at that time is ruling the known world under one government. It's one world rule, or a one world government. They accomplished that part of it. Now they did not accomplish the one world religion, and they did not accomplish a one world monetary system either. So they fell short in those things. And then, of course, you know that in the 5th century AD, the Roman Empire was defeated. And then in the 9th century AD, the Eastern Roman Empire was defeated. But they lived on, in my opinion, through the Roman Catholic Church and are still alive today and still going. And we may see that revival happen, like we see described in the Bible, where there's going to be a revival of that Roman Empire, and everybody's going to be under one world government. So then we fast forward to Adolf Hitler, and we know what happened there. This is Satan's move, man. Or Napoleon. Forget Adolf Hitler. Go to Napoleon. Napoleon tries to do the same thing. He's going to try and take over Europe, but God stops it as well at the Battle of Waterloo. Napoleon is finally defeated, and that's the end of him. Then we have Adolf Hitler and the Allies get together. Christian nations fighting against this godless, indecent man, Adolf Hitler. Move, counter move. So what's going on today? Well, all the pieces are coming together, and we know that eventually it's going to happen, that there's a one world government, a one world religion, and a one world monetary system. That is Satan's plan, and it has been from the beginning. He's tried many, many times to make it happen, and it's failed every single time because God has put him in checkmate. But God is going to let him think that he's going to win. And now, when he does get to that point where he thinks he's winning, the nations of the earth are going to get together to fight against Jesus, who they know is coming. Now, I heard it explained this way, and it's very interesting. And this is all speculation, so don't hold me to it. Don't try to put words in my mouth and say that I believe this, because it's speculation. Who knows? But what could happen is we could see, and according to the plan that I've mentioned before in videos about what the Illuminati is going to do, they've got the plan. They had a plan for World War I, World War II, World War III, which is supposed to be against the Muslims, and then World War IV, which is supposed to be against an alien power. So this alien power comes, right? And the alien power comes and they say, hey, we're going to help you cure cancer. We're going to clean up your water and your atmosphere. We're going to stop global warming, because everybody knows that there's global warming, right? Especially you folks in Michigan who are freezing and under snow and ice and sleet and hail and all that good stuff. Global warming. We're going to help clean up global warming. We're going to give you free power for everybody. We're going to cure all diseases. You'll live to be 500 years old. It'll be great. We're going to reverse the aging process. We're going to make your lives wonderful. We're just going to absolutely take the earth, and we're going to put you into 500 years into the future, and everything's going to be perfect and wonderful and great. But we've got an enemy that's coming after us. He wants to kill us. So we're going to need you to help us fight him. Who's that enemy? Jesus. So that's speculation. I don't know that that's going to happen. Or maybe we're going to get into a war against the aliens, and there's going to be a human leader that's going to come out of humanity and is going to lead us to victory over them. I don't know what's going to happen, and neither does anybody else, but those are possibilities. Interesting things to think about. But the point is that God has a plan, and his plan is from beginning to end, and it's already worked out. But Satan also has a plan, and his plan is reactionary to what God's plan is. He's always reacting to what God does. He's counter moving the moves that God makes. God's going to win, Satan is going to lose. Bottom line, that's all there is to it. Well, that's all the time that I've got. God bless you. See you on the next video.